Thank you, Mayor. My name is Boyd Linden, First Southwest Company. We've got a booklet in front of you. This is the completion tonight with your approval of 3 separate bond issues. And so we'll go over this quickly. But immediately behind the cover page where it says City of Mesquite, we have a summary of the 2016 bond sales. One was a combination tax and limited surplus revenue certificate of obligation series 2016. $11,815,000, 20 years. The first 10 years we're financing quicker because those are shorter lived assets. And then you see we have a true interest cost of 2.623. And then the second one, general obligation refunding and improvement bonds, series 2016. So we've got a refunding piece and a new money piece here. So the final par amount on the refunding is $17,295,000. Gross savings of $1,968,000. Present value savings of $1,695,000. And that's 8.9% of the refunded bonds. The new money portion, is $23,270,000. That will net us $25 million in construction proceeds. It's issued over a term of 20 years at a true interest cost of 3.236. Now you may ask, why did the COs do better than the general obligation bonds? And that's because the certificates of obligation are a little bit shorter, and the way these yields are done, yield year one is 0.75%. The yield in year 2036, which is the final maturity, is 3.29%. And so if you mature some up front with those lower yields, you get a lower true interest cost, and that's what happened here. The $23,270,000 are matured over 20 years, as the city is accustomed to doing when it issues bonds. And then finally, we did the waterworks and sewer system revenue refunding bonds, series 2016. And again, we have a new money portion of $6,845,000, true interest cost of 3.151, and then a refunding portion over 12 years. And of course, we're refunding some bonds that were issued a while back. Gross savings of $1,146,000, present value savings of $1,017,000, and that's 10.8% of the refunded bonds. And to kind of give you an idea, we've been refunding bonds since interest rates were the highest, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But typically we run about 4, 5, 6% present value savings. And so you can see what these low interest rates are doing. And then if the next page there talks about the ratings, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but S&P is a AA, Moody's is AA2 on the COs and general obligation bonds, and then Moody's and S&P affirmed the AA on the water and sewer bonds. If you go behind tab A, you'll see what the market looks like. And you'll see that the red is the City of Mesquite GO bonds. The green is the City of Mesquite CO bonds. And then the most recent bond buyer index is 3.40%. And you see just above that purple line, it says low is 3.27%. Well, that's the lowest that we've seen since. In fact, we're running right close to 50-year lows in interest rates right now. So that gives you a general idea of what we're doing in the bond market, and the sheets behind that are simply the data points that we have on that. And then behind the first tab 1, quickly, that's just the debt service on the combination tax and revenue bonds. Behind tab 2 is the debt service on the general obligation refunding and improvement bonds, and then tab 3, my tab 3 is sticking to tab C, but as the is the debt service on the water and sewer system revenue bonds, and those all are net of the savings. And by the way, those savings numbers I quoted to you are net of expenses as well. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is the ratings, and that's the last two tabs in the book, tab 1 and tab 2. And I want to go over tab 1, Standard & Poor's. I like their presentation, and they're going to say much the same thing that Moody's says because their ratings are equivalent. But if you'll, and I would also recommend to the council, this is not heavy-duty reading, and I think this is good reading for you to sit down. It'll take you less than 5 minutes to go through it and give you some idea of what the national rating services think of the city of Mesquite. But if you look on page, it's actually page 2, the first page was a cover page, but there's some bullet points there. So the first bullet point, this rating reflects our opinion of expenditures. And so that first bullet point is something that Mesquite really has no control over. So that's just a function of the economy in the city of Mesquite. Second bullet point, very strong management. Third bullet point, strong budgetary performance. Fourth, very strong budgetary flexibility. Fifth, very strong liquidity. And then finally, the weak debt and contingent liability position. I see this on virtually all of my clients. That sounds bad, but it's not. And here what they're talking about is about 1/3, give or take, of the city's tax rate goes to service debt. And they would like to see that at something less than 10%. So, and again, if you're living in the Metroplex, you're going to get exactly the same thing. And then contingent liabilities are all of the overlapping entities that levy taxes on citizens in the city of Mesquite, which would be the county and the school and junior college district and so forth and so on. And so each one has a lot of debt. The schools in particular in the state of Texas fund most of their debt directly. In many other states, it's funded by the state. And so the citizens don't see that direct debt. They see it up at the state level. But that's one thing that explains the very last bullet point. The point being, you're AA stable. That's a good rating. It's where you ought to be right now, and you're running your business. The things you can control, you're running your business as you should. So, and the second tab is on the water and sewer, and it's a enterprise fund. It's going to be a little different. You've got on Standard & Poor's, you've got a AA with a negative outlook. So we'll go through that right quick. Why is that a negative outlook? Well, their opinion, there's some positive things going on here as well as the negative things. But you're a stable, primarily residential customer base. Residents are good customers. Residents typically pay their water bills because they need the water. City's role is a distribution only. You've got North Texas Municipal Water District taking the risk on the treatment process, delivering the water, accepting the wastewater. Those are capital expenditures that you don't have to do, and that's a good thing. You've also shown a willingness to adjust rates, and that's been noted over the years. In fact, they talk about that 2 or 3 different times. Now, for the bad news, but again, you're in the same boat as just about as most of North Texas clients. Your revenue, your coverage levels are a little bit thin, so your net revenues are just barely covering your debt service requirements, and they'd like to see those a little fatter. Well, of course, you went through a period of time you couldn't sell water. You didn't have water, you couldn't sell water. To sell water, you have to raise money, and so they got a little bit thin. The one good thing about the rating services is 1 year doesn't make a rating, and so they've said all the positive things. They're looking back in history and they've seen all the positive things that the city has done, and they expect the city to continue that. These ratings are long-term ratings. you've got these bonds outstanding over 20 years, and they don't casually go out and they'll re-examine them every year, but they don't casually go out when problems surface and pop a rating. They give you time to work things out. But all in, you're AA on the water and sewer. And again, that's exactly where you need to be. They're just looking for a little bit more in coverage level, a little bit higher revenue base. But they've noted that you're handling your business the way you need to. We're very pleased with the rates that we've received. As Debbie said earlier, we actually priced this on Thursday. And this is the culmination. You'll be passing the ordinances. We've got Leroy Grawunder with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton here that can answer the legal questions. We've covered our part, all three. We can recommend this to the city for its consideration.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Any questions just from council for Boyd?
I don't have any questions, Mayor. I have some comments.
Okay.
I always love to see you guys show up, Boyd. I just, as it's stated over here under the, I guess it was the general obligations rating section, very strong management, strong budgetary performance, very strong budgetary flexibility, very strong liquidity. I mean, those are all great things that we can brag about in Mesquite that nobody ever hears about. I mean, maybe it excites me because I'm an accountant, I don't know, but it's one of those things that you don't hear about, that we're doing such a good job with our financial matters here in Mesquite. And I give all the credit for that to the management, both past and present, since we recently had a transition to a new city manager here, and he's getting his feet wet on all this stuff. But I think he's going to continue the tradition that we've seen for the last 30 years of good management and good financial control. And so I think it's a great thing that we're able to do this bond refunding. And if I added right, we're saving $3.1 million or a little over in interest on this, just on the refunding part. And that's not something to sneeze at when you can save $3 million. And so I think it's shows great performance by the city and great vision by the city. And so I'm real happy that you're here tonight to present this to us. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tarpley. Yes, Mr. Notion.
I have a question. Yes, just so I get this straight in my head, the refund that you're talking about, the refunding, it's basically the equivalent of a consumer going out and refinancing their house, right?
Precisely.
Okay.
And
so now everybody in the audience finally understands, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. And, we did not extend the maturities. We mirrored exactly the debt that was outstanding. We simply lowered the interest rate, and you'll be actually, as a result, you'll be paying off your debt much quicker than you originally had before we actually refunded. So,
right. Now, the water bond outlook change was primarily attributable to the drought, correct?
It is, and like I say, they're just looking at you to get those revenues back up to your historic levels.
I guess the negative outlook was a result of what they were doing is they take the data from the debt from the drought years, and they're extrapolating out that data, and that's what they're basing their outlook on, rather than saying, well, it's an anomaly because of the drought and the take-or-pay system.
Well, what they do is they put that outlook on there, which is very nice because 20 years ago we didn't have an outlook. You just had to guess, is this rating going to go up or is it going to go down? And what they're saying is, we've got a negative outlook. We're going to come back in a year, give or take, and take a look at it and see what we see, and we'll go from there. So they're going to be looking at the results for this year, and they're going to be looking at the budget for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. We'll go on to item 6.